Locks in the Panama Canal are 1,000 foot long by 110 foot wide. This ship is 887 by 108. There's no problem transiting this locks lengthwise or widthwise. When an Iowa class ship like this would move, then the locks in the Panama Canal would have only a foot of clearance on either side. At this point in time, all four of the Iowa class ships have again been decommissioned. They're very large and expensive ships to operate. Wisconsin arriving at Nauticus about 14 years ago. The ship is open to the public for tour as part of the paid admission to Nauticus, the National Maritime Center. The last conflict this ship was involved in was an Operation Desert Storm back in the early 90s when Iraq had invaded Kuwait. And these ships, when they first put to sea in the 40s, they actually carried a crew of about 3,000 on board. Even after they're modernized in the 80s, still carrying a crew of about 1,600. And they're fast ships even by today's standards. Aboard there are 8 boilers designed to generate steam that would turn 4 steam turbines, and when combined, can generate 212,000 shaft horsepower. This is about a 42, 43 mile an hour warship. What's amazing about that, the technology for building the ship dating back to the late 30s to the early 40s. Certainly, if you're in the downtown Norfolk area and a few hours of your time to spare, it's worth your while to tour the Wisconsin as well as the Nauticus facility. Located to our right, we'll see a couple of condominiums. The condo directly to our right is called the Point condos. Were built here just about the same time the battleship arrived in Norfolk, which is around 14 years ago. We'll come around a corner here. If you look to your right, we'll see coming into view, just on the other side of the Point condos, the Freemason Harbor condominiums. That building was converted to make waterfront warehouse. The conversion took place a little over 30 years ago. Further inshore on the right past those condos, well inshore back among those trees, there's a 3-story white home, which has 5 large white chimneys, black roofs. Some of the windows have black shutters around them. Inshore directly to your right, the old Selden estate, which is owned by Dr. Selden. He was the Confederate Surgeon General. He and Robert E. Lee were good friends. When Lee was in Norfolk, he would often stay at Selden's home, but during the Union Army's occupation of Norfolk in the Civil War, the home to your right was also used as Union headquarters. Also to our right, a complex of white buildings with blue trim, making up the headquarters of the Atlantic Marine Center, which is part of NOAA. NOAA is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. At that facility, they map and chart the bottoms of oceans, harbors, rivers, bays, and sounds. In turn, those charts would be used by ship and boat captains almost the same as a motorist would use a road map. There are 2 small white ships of the NOAA docks, both of them used by NOAA in coast to geodetic survey work, in other words, for mapping and charting. This past the NOAA base, that bridge is the Bramilton Avenue Bridge. On the other side of the Bramilton Bridge, a very nice section of Norfolk called Ghent. A lot of nice old homes in that area. Most were built towards the latter part of the 1800s. Just to the left end of the Bramilton Bridge, and now directly to your right, is a small 4-story white office building with dark windows. That building several years ago became the international headquarters for PETA, which is People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. And a little closer to us, coming up on our right, the Pier condominiums. That used to be a Sears and Roebuck warehouse. The building was initially constructed here back in the 20s. Many years ago, it was converted to some very nice waterfront condos. To direct your attention off to your left and ahead of us. If you look off in that direction, that would be looking down the Portsmouth waterfront. Just ahead of us is a private shipyard operated by General Dynamics. We're going to find 2 identical ships in that yard this afternoon. Closest to us is the Cape Ray, and alongside her is the Cape Race. You may notice that both of those ships ahead of us to our left have red, white, and blue bandies around their stacks. And what to note or indicate, these are government-owned cargo ships that are under the jurisdiction of the Federal Maritime Administration. The Federal Maritime Administration maintain a fleet of around 50 or so non-combatant cargo ships that are maintained in a reduced operational status. These are ships that could be activated during an emergency or time of war to supplement our military in transporting a vast array of military hardware and equipment. The 2 ships to our left are often referred to as row-row ships. That term would refer to a large roll-on, roll-off ramp on the ship's stern. When a ramp is lowered to a dock, you would permit them to drive on or off the ship a variety of mechanized equipment machinery. These ships themselves out of these docks in a 5 to 10 day operational status. The ship closest to us, which is named the Cape Ray, was outfitted for a different mission. About this time last year, they started loading for this ship's equipment called hydrolysis equipment, used in neutralizing chemical weapons. This was a ship that was sent to Syria about this time last year to neutralize water-filled building, serving as the headquarters for the United States Army Corps of Engineers, headquarters for the Norfolk District. Among the many things they do here would be to maintain harbors and rivers, as well as the intercoastal waterway. Coming into view to your right behind that building, you're going to see some brick walls painted white in color. When they come into view, you'll be looking at Fort Norfolk. This fort was financed and constructed by the citizens of Norfolk and went into operation in the year of 1810. The fort was also in use during the War of 1812, serving as Norfolk's secondary line of defense against a British invasion, which did take place in that conflict. The invasion for this region came in the year of 1813. At that time, the British had sailed part of their fleet into Hampton Roads. As they approached the mouth of the Elizabeth River, they were engaged by American forces at Craney Island, which lies in the distance ahead of us. The British defeated the Craney Island, and after their defeat, they then sailed back out of Hampton Roads. On their way out, though, they shelled and burned the city of Hampton, Virginia. Then they turned north at the Chesapeake Bay and later invaded Washington, D.C. Had the Americans failed to stop the British at Craney Island, this fort, though, back to your right, and this Fort Norfolk would have been used as part of the secondary line of defense. But during the War of 1812, the British never made it this far up the Elizabeth River. Next on our right is a J.H. Miles & Company. They've been operating on that site for 114 years. Their specialty at J.H. Miles, clam packing. If you've ever tried Campbell's clam chowder and you were lucky enough to find a clam in it was probably supplied by the J.H. Miles & Company. Clams and oysters are generally harvested during the cooler months of the year. As a good rule of thumb, any month of the year containing the letter R in its spelling would be the best month to harvest clams and oysters. During this time, the J.H. Miles & Company will daily produce about 4.5 tons of clam meat, most of which goes to Campbell's Soup. As we pass the buildings here at J.H. Miles, well and short on the right, you'll notice quite a bit of construction work underway. There's some cranes and also construction barges. Likewise, on the other side of the river to your left and ahead of us, there's more construction work underway. They're in the process of building a new tunnel that will link Norfolk and Portsmouth. There's already an existing tunnel down, known as the Midtown Tunnel, that went into operation back in 1962. The new tunnel under construction is being built right alongside the existing tunnel. On our return trip, we'll pass back over the same area a little later coming in this afternoon. At that time, I'll go into a bit more detail about the construction of the new Midtown Tunnel. In the meantime, ahead of us to our right, another private shipyard. This next one coming up is operated by a company known as Marine Hydraulics International. They actually perform mainly government contract work in the yard, but currently they are doing some commercial work here. The vessel at the docks ahead of us to your right is a bulk carrier. She is registered out of Hong Kong. Such a ship will be used to carry bulk commodities like grain, fertilizer, coal, and ore, things of that type. The ship is empty at this time. If fully loaded, all that red paint on the sides of that ship would set below the surface of the water. That's when the ship would be fully loaded. And this shipyard to our right, they only perform topside repairs here, so more than likely the ship is here undergoing some topside or some type of mechanical repairs here in the yard. It's only been in for a couple of weeks. Just past the Marine Hydraulics Pier, coming up on our right, are the Lambert's Point docks. These docks are owned by the Norfolk Southern Railway. They're operated by Norfolk Southern on Lambert's Point Docks Incorporated. They're older general merchandising piers. Exported from these piers, a lot of heavy equipment and machinery, including railroad locomotives. Imported here, crude rubber, plywood, paper products, and other lumber goods coming in from South America. This first pier to our right, which is Pier P, that pier is the largest exporter of railroad locomotives in the entire world. The locomotives arriving in this pier for export are built by General Electric up in Erie, Pennsylvania. And they literally export hundreds and hundreds of them from these piers every year. Those locomotives are bound for countries all around the world. These piers to our right have been here for quite some time. Pier P, directly to your right, dates back to 1960. The other pier further ahead of us to our right goes all the way back to 1942. Both piers are still operational today. Thus, I direct your attention at this time to our left. And to our left, there is a container facility. It's called the Portsmouth Marine Terminal. It is owned by the state of Virginia. It is operated for the state by Virginia International Terminals Incorporated. And about 4 years ago, the Virginia Port Authority actually closed that facility down for handling containerized cargo. Prior to the closing of that complex, they had moved container operations to a new and a very modern facility, which is located in the distance just ahead of us. That new facility, though, is privately owned by a company known as AP Moller Maersk. Based out of Copenhagen, Denmark, they have the largest containerized cargo operation in the world. We'll get a little close to the APM terminal in a few minutes, so I'll go into more detail about a deal that took place between Virginia Port Authority and APM to make this happen. Well, good news for the Port of Virginia, because as of October 1st, a couple of months ago, they reopened the Portsmouth Marine Terminal. The good news is business has picked up enough to reopen the facility. We'll be servicing primarily smaller container ships in the complex to our left. The much larger container ships with larger capacities will be serviced by the more automated facility, which is located in the distance ahead of us. And again, we'll go into more detail about that in just a few minutes. The bridge located off in the distance to our left is the West Norfolk Bridge, and it spans the western branch of the Elizabeth River. The western branch of the Elizabeth dead ends about 6.5 miles on the other side of the West Norfolk Bridge. The reason some of the subdivisions within the city of Portsmouth have Norfolk in their name is at one time. This entire area was all known as Norfolk County. It's on the left side of the bridge, the community of Port Norfolk, and on the right side of the bridge, the community of West Norfolk, which actually are subdivisions within the city of Portsmouth. What I would like to point out next is located directly ahead of us. If you're down at the main cabin of the boat, you'll probably have a hard time seeing it until we get alongside it. So what we'll be pointing out to you in a few moments will be the United States Navy's affirming or degaussing station. When we pass by, it'll be on our left side. It is at this facility we're about to pass the United States Navy that magnetize their ships. And some good reasons for doing this. One is to keep the ship from detonating a magnetic mine. Another reason, a magnetic field carried within the ship's hull would have the tendency to throw the accuracy on some of the ship's instruments, including magnetic compass. And for those reasons, the Navy demagnetize their ships. The process is fairly simple. In the facility coming up ahead of us, you'll find one very large slip. The Navy can run into that slip anything from a submarine to an aircraft carrier. Once in that slip, that vessel is wrapped with electrical cables from one end to the other. Cables are generally spaced 12, 15 foot apart. And once that vessel is totally wrapped with cables, it will pass an electric current with those cables in one direction. The duration of the current will last anywhere from a minute to a minute and a half. As you're passing current through those cables have a tendency to heat up, so they're allowed about 15 minutes to cool down. Once the cooling process is completed, current is passed through the cables again, but next time in the opposite direction. The cycle is repeated many times. Eventually, it will neutralize the electromagnetic field within the ship's hull. The process of deperming, as it is called, was discovered by a French scientist by the name of Gauss, just before the beginning of the Second World War. You may even find it interesting, the slips and piers to our left are oriented, so they're facing magnetic north and south. When they demagnetize the ship, it will be in harmony with the Earth's magnetic field. Generally, a U.S. warship is only degaussed like this once in its lifetime. When they build the ship today, it is done with a process known as arc welding. In other words, to get that welding rod to melt and join two plates of metal together, they have to pass an electric current through them. That's what sets up the electromagnetic field. So generally, after a U.S. warship is commissioned, it's not long after that, the ship is sent to a facility like the one to your left. We want to go through the deperming process, and again, it is usually only done once in a ship's lifetime. Further to our left at this time, you're looking at a fairly new $500 million container facility. It is privately owned by a company known as AP Moller-Maersk. We mentioned before they're based out of Copenhagen, Denmark, and they have the largest containerized cargo operation in the world. First opened that facility to our left in the summer of 2007. When they first opened, they were operating that complex at maybe 25 to 30% of its capacity. At that time, they were servicing only their own container ships and ships from another container company. 2008, 2009 rolled around. Those 2 years turned out to be two of the worst years for world shipping in recent history. In 2009, Maersk reported losing over $8 billion. The state of Virginia got that news. Virginia Port Authority approached Maersk, asked them to be interested in leasing the facility, and that's exactly what happened here a little over 5 years ago. Virginia Port Authority has leased the complex to our left for 20 years for about $800 million. Now that the state of Virginia is operating the facility, they're actually doing a lot better, more like about 75 to 80% of its capacity. That's pretty good considering today's economy. This time they are still servicing Maersk container ships, but also this time now servicing container ships and companies from all around the world. We'll see one container ship in the berth to our left, owned by the Zim Lines, which is an Israeli shipping company. And by the way, the state of Virginia, they were thrilled to have the ability to operate this complex to our left, and the reason being, to our left, that is the most highly automated container facility in all of the Americas. They have large cranes on that dock, are among the largest and fastest container cranes in the world, not to mention the fact that about 90% of all the systems to our left are automated. It is a super efficient container facility, and for the next 15 years, the state of Virginia will operate the complex to our left. After that time, it will then revert back to Maersk. If you continue to look to your left, but to the far right end of the container facility, you'll notice some small white ships to our left. These are all medium endurance Coast Guard cutters. Those cutters are located at the Coast Guard Support Center Portsmouth, Virginia. That's one of the Coast Guard's larger or more modern bases on the eastern seaboard of the United States. It's also home to the Coast Guard 5th District. Coming up on our right and ahead of us, the Norfolk Southern Railway's coal piers at Lambert's Point. Up until a few years ago, this was the largest coal shipping point in the world. There's only one pier operational. Coming up on our right is Pier 6, which went into service back in 1963. Despite its age, it is still the fastest coal loading facility in the world and one of the very few that's capable of blending different grades of coal as it is loaded directly aboard ships. Just over a year ago, a new coal loading record was set at Pier 6. They loaded 169,000 net tons of coal aboard one ship. That would actually make a train about 3 miles long, when the facility to your right is working at its maximum potential and capable of loading one train car of coal aboard a ship about every 27 seconds. Ships that carry coal are called colliers. We'll see one collier on the north side of Pier 6. The ship is now being loaded with coal. Most colliers that call here range in length between 9 to 1,100 feet, must carry between 100 to 125,000 tons. Majority of the coal exported from these piers, most of it's a high grade. It is primarily in the metallurgical industry, such as the manufacturing of steel. The coal is mined in the states of Virginia, West Virginia, parts of Pennsylvania, Kentucky, and Tennessee. It is brought here by the Norfolk Southern Railway and supplied by over 100 suppliers on their rail system. The majority of the coal exported from these piers, most of it at high grade, is used primarily, and as we mentioned, in the metallurgical industry. And most of the coal is sold to countries over in Europe, and also a lot of the coal is going to China. Now, immediately on our left, we'll see a very large container ship. She's bound for the APM terminal to our left. The ship is owned by the Evergreen Line, which is a Taiwanese shipping company. The ship to your left is a good example of what is called a post-Panamax container ship. At this time is a project underway in Panama to lengthen and widen the locks in the Panama Canal. That project will be completed sometime next year. Once completed, ships the size of the one to your left will be able to transit the locks in the Panama Canal. That ship's about 1,090 foot in length. She is 140 foot across her beam. If loaded only with 20-foot units of containerized cargo, that ship's capacity would be somewhere in the neighborhood of around 8,420-foot units. And when you look at a ship like this, the containers not only stacked on the main deck up, but from the main deck all the way to the bottom of the ship. It could be as many as another 10 stacks of containers below what we already see up on the ship's main deck. And the ship to our left will be docking here at the APM terminal to start loading and offloading cargo. By the way, the standard time of these ships are in port generally range from about 12 to maybe 18 hours. They're not in port for a long time. It depends on the number of moves you have to make or the amount of cargo has to be loaded or offloaded from the ship. But again, just in that short period of time, with the efficiency of those trains to our left, they can move a tremendous amount of cargo. And the ship over to our left, registered out of London, England. Ladies and gentlemen, to our left at this time, the Navy's refueling depot at Coney Island. That is the largest military fuel depot in the United States, one of the largest in the world. The Navy's fleet of oil and other underway replenishment ships with Collier to take on petroleum products. In turn, those ships will travel with the strike group and mission at sea is providing rapid replenishment of petroleum in the stores of the fleet. We're not going to see any replenishment ships at the depot to our left this afternoon, but we'll see some of those ships at the naval station a little later in today's tour. We find it interesting that the majority of the petroleum products that come to Coney Island actually arrive by pipeline that originates in Texas. Some petroleum does come in by tanker, but most of it does come in by pipeline. Now, the next couple minutes, we will leave the Elizabeth River, which is behind us. And this is Hampton Roads, one of the largest and finest natural harbors in the world. Hampton Roads is about 4 to 5 miles wide, approximately 12 miles long. It has been said that every ship in the world can anchor at Hampton Roads and its tributaries at the same time, and there would be room for more. This is the way into the ocean, the Hampton Roads, the Chesapeake Bay, and eventually into the Atlantic. Hampton Roads covers an area of about 60 square miles and is formed by the merging of 4 rivers. There are the James River, the Lafayette, the Nansemond, and also the Elizabeth Rivers. The English discovered Hampton Roads in the early 1600s. At that time, they called it the Earl of Southampton's roadstead. The word roadstead in Old English, meaning large anchorage, the name has not been changed, but over the years it has simply been shortened to Hampton Roads. So it is 100 acres. This home to just under 90 warships. The close to 100,000 men and women call Norfolk their home port. Adjacent to the base and shore ahead of us to our right, you would also find the Naval Air Station, about 150 aircraft that are stationed here. The piers ahead of us to our right, those piers are referred to as the D and S, are the destroyer and submarine piers. And the piers of the base are also numerically numbered. For example, the first pier coming up on our right is Pier 1. On the side of Pier 1, we'll find a large white ship with the red crosses, which is the United States Naval Hospital Ship Comfort. Our Navy operated made 2 hospital ships. The Comfort is home ported on the east coast of the U.S., and a ship identical to her named the Mercy that is home ported out of San Diego, California. Initially, both the Comfort and Mercy were San Clemente-class commercial oil tankers. The tankers at one time used to carry crude oil from Alaska down to California. The Navy acquired those tankers years ago, converting both of them into 1,000-bed hospital ships, 12 operating rooms aboard, all the modern amenities you would find at any modern hospital in the U.S. We found aboard our hospital ships like the Mercy and the Comfort. Ordinarily, these ships are in a reduced operational status that can be activated during an emergency or time of war. Occasionally, the Navy even activated these ships for humanitarian cruises. If activated, though, a ship like Comfort would be crewed for the Navy by the Military Sealift Command. They're a civilian group very similar to the American Merchant Marine. Whenever a naval ship is operated by the Military Sealift Command, it will always be denoted by the light blue and gold bandings that are painted around the stack or stacks on that particular ship. The Comfort being a highly automated ship for actual operation, that ship requires a crew of only 77. Now, as far as staffing the ship with medical personnel, on this ship they pull staff from the Naval Regional Medical Center in Portsmouth. We passed by there earlier this afternoon, and we're fully staffed. The Comfort accommodates about 1,000 medical personnel aboard. A large ship at 894 foot in length, she is 105 foot across her beam. And the ship sets at these docks in a reduced operational status. She's only been home ported in Norfolk for about 3 years. Prior to that, the ship had always been home ported out of Baltimore, Maryland. Coming up on these next piers past the Comfort, you're going to be looking at some really high-tech warships. In fact, you'll find one of those ships just on the other side of the pier from the Comfort. That ship that bears the number 81 up on her bow is the USS Sir Winston Churchill. Churchill is an Arleigh-Burke-class guided missile destroyer. Ships of this class are state-of-the-art. They have been equipped with the world's most advanced naval weapon system known as Aegis. The word itself, Aegis, is a Greek word meaning shield. The shield referred to on this ship is a superior air defense system. The primary function or goal of the Aegis-equipped ship is to escort and to defend the battle group from airstrike, but yet that's a very versatile warship. Churchill can engage and destroy land-based targets from hundreds of miles away, engage and destroy enemy surface ships and submarines, but that ship would specialize primarily in air defense. At the heart of the Aegis system, this ship carries aboard a new type of radar. It is called phased array or spot 1 radar. If you will direct your attention to the forward structure of the Churchill up high, and on this corner of the forward structure, you will notice what looks like an 8-sided or octagon-shaped plate. That plate should be very easy for you to identify the slightly lighter gray color than the surrounding area. If you're looking at that 8-sided plate, you're looking at a phased array or spot 1 radar. It is the heart of the Aegis system. Because it is a fixed or stationary radar, a ship like the Churchill will carry 4 of them aboard. They are situated so they will emit signals in a 360-degree radius completely around the ship. The radar aboard this ship would allow her to track over 1,000 targets at the same time. While tracking all these targets, the ship can keep tabs on friendly aircraft and friendly ships that operate within her vicinity, but at the same time can also determine those targets that are considered to be hostile. Once a target is verified as hostile, Aegis has the ability of selecting an appropriate weapon, then launching that weapon to engage and destroy the threat. That entire process takes only fractions of a second, which is rather amazing. These ships are heavily armed. Up on the bow of that ship, you'll see a fully automated 5-inch 62 caliber gun. The gun you'll find up on the bow of the Churchill is carried only on the newer ships of the Arleigh-Burke class. The gun can fire a conventional round with a range of 18 miles, but it also handles what is called an extended range guided munition, or what is called an ERGM. And once the projectile leaves the barrel of that gun, it is propelled by a rocket propellant. 3 small fins will pop out of the side of the projectile to guide it. It is guided by GPS, or Global Positioning System, which gives the projectile pinpoint accuracy. The small deck gun up on the bow of the Churchill has an incredible range of about 50 miles, called a 5-inch 62, again carried only on the newer ships of the Arleigh-Burke class. The ship also carries aboard a second gun system called Vulcan Phalanx. We'll tell you more about it in a few minutes. In addition to the gun system, a ship like this will carry an array of missiles, and on the Churchill you'll find it interesting, and most of her weaponry is actually launched through what is called VLS, the vertical launch system. Simply put, missiles are stored and launched through vertical cells below the ship's main deck. Between two VLS launchers on the ship, one up on her bow, the other on her stern, Churchill will carry up to 96 missiles situated in vertical launch. It allows that ship a rapid offload of many types of missiles at the same time. It would enable her to engage and destroy many different targets at once. This would greatly increase the survivability of that ship, as well as the ship's capability to defend the ships within the surrounding battle group. Most important weapon deployed from an Aegis-equipped ship is the SM-2 Block 3 standard surface to-air missile. It would allow a ship like the Churchill to engage and destroy high-performance aircraft or incoming missiles about 70 miles out. She may strike land-based targets from hundreds of miles away with pinpoint accuracy using the Tomahawk cruise missile. She can also strike the enemy's surface ship over the horizon with a low-flying sea-speed missile called Harpoon. The ship has excellent anti-submarine warfare capabilities. Aboard the Churchill, she carries the Mark 46 torpedo. That ship can also launch from her aft-deck helicopters that would assist her in detecting, locating, as well as destroying the enemy submarine. The Winston Churchill is 509 foot long. That ship is 59 foot across her beam and highly automated, requiring a crew of around 340. There are currently 62 ships of this class in operation, making up the largest percentage of surface ships now serving in the United States Navy. Let's jump up to the second pier of the base, and that's going to be Pier 2. We're going to find 4 ships on that pier. All four of those are Aegis-equipped ships, but only 2 of them are Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyers. The Arleigh Burkes are the ship closest to us coming up on our right, which is number 58, the USS Laboon. And back on the opposite side of the pier, up in the far corner of the opposite side of the pier, is number 74, the USS McFall. Those are both Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyers. They're like the USS Winston Churchill. The other 2 ships on that pier are of a different class, but they're Aegis-equipped. Those ships are Ticonderoga-class cruisers. On this side of the pier, well and short of the right, you would find hull number 72, the USS Bellagolf, and on the opposite side of the pier at this end, another Ticonderoga-class cruiser, hull number 68, which is the USS Anzio. Ships of this class, which are the Ticonderoga-class cruisers, they were the first ships in the fleet to be equipped with the Aegis system. The Navy were building those ships back in the mid-80s through the 90s. There were 27 of them constructed, and 22 of the 27 still remaining in operation today. They basically have all the same capabilities as the Arleigh Burkes. Even though they're older ships, they've been upgraded. Their ships are a little bit larger in size of the Ticonderoga class. They're 566 foot long. They're 55 foot across their beams, and they carry a crew of around 375. Because they're larger ships, they will carry additional weapons. Each of those ships will carry an additional 5-inch gun mount on their aft deck, and they will also carry up to 122 missiles in their VLS vertical launch systems. So if you look to your right, here at the end of the pier on either side, you get a great chance to view the 2 different classes of ships in our Navy that have been equipped with this fast-action digital computer defense system known as Aegis. Immediately on our left, we'll see a tugboat pushing a liquid cargo barge. It could be loaded with liquid chemicals or possibly petroleum products. We're bound to one of the fuel facilities, probably up on the southern branch of the Elizabeth River. Let's get back to the naval base. And to our right is Pier 3, which is often referred to as the submarine pier. In Norfolk, Virginia, we have only attack submarines imported here. The Navy's larger subs that carry ballistic missiles are stationed to the south of us down in Kings Bay, Georgia. Only attack submarines here in Norfolk. The 3 subs on Pier 3 to our right, even though they're in good view, sometimes they're hard to locate. First off, let's tell you the submarines are painted entirely black in color. About 28 feet of them are below the surface of the water, so there's a lot more of these subs that would set below the water than we'd see above. There are no identifying names or numbers on these submarines, so we know what class they are, but we don't know what names of these subs are. So we'll see 2 subs on this side of Pier 3. Get a great view of one of them at this end of the pier. The other one's at the far end of the pier, well and short of the right. The 3rd sub on Pier 3 is on the opposite side of that pier, about midway down on the other side. The 3 subs that we'll see here today are all identical. These are 688 Los Angeles class fast attack subs. They're among the newest and very finest to be added to the U.S. fleet, considered to be super high speed, super quiet, and deep diving. These submarines are 360 feet long, 33 foot across their beam. They would each carry a crew of 127. They're powered by one atomic reactor. The core and reactor plant on the submarines will power them for 15 to 20 years between refuelings, equivalent to a distance of over 1,000,000 miles in steaming time. A speed on the surface of 20 knots and dive 30 knots plus top speed is classified information. If you did not know, a knot is equal to about 1 1/8 of a mile an hour. The primary mission of an attack submarine like the ones to our right would be to engage and destroy the enemy submarine, but these are very versatile warships. They carry on board these subs the Tomahawk cruise missile that will allow them to strike land-based targets. They may also engage the enemy surface ship over the horizon with a low-flying sea-skimming missile called Harpoon. But to engage the enemy submarine, after all, that is their primary function. Aboard them, they carry the world's most advanced torpedo. It's called a Mark 48 torpedo. It's heavyweight, wire-guided, has an effective range of 23 miles. It will travel at speeds of over 70 miles an hour, and the ability to track and chase the enemy submarine to depths of well over 3,000 feet. And if you look to your right on this pier, again, 3 of the Navy 688 Los Angeles class attack subs. Let's move up to the second pier. Actually, the next pier past Pier 3 is Pier 4. We're going to find 3 ships on that pier. All 3 of those are Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyers. Let's start off with the 2 that are furthest away from us. Number 98 is the USS Forrest Sherman. She's one of the newer ships of the Arleigh Burke class. On the other side of the pier from the Forrest Sherman is the Arleigh Burke. She's the lead ship of the first of the class constructed. Therefore, the class of ship is named for her. The Arleigh Burke was built up in Bath, Maine at Bath Iron Works, commissioned on the 4th of July, 1991. She is the first of over 60 of the class to be built for our Navy. These ships are very expensive. Even when the Arleigh Burke came online back in 91, she was built at the cost of almost $1 billion. The newer ships of this class, with upgraded weapons and electronics imported, now coming online at the cost of closer to $2 billion. We'll see another one of the newer Arleigh Burkes at the end of the pier, number 96, which is the USS Bainbridge. This ship was in a movie that took place a little over a year ago. The movie was titled Captain Phillips. And if you happen to see that movie, it was about a container ship named the Maersk Alabama, true story. Maersk Alabama was sailing in waters off the coast of Somalia when that container ship was boarded by 4 Somali pirates. Pirates boarded that ship basically and taking control of the Maersk Alabama. They ended up departing from that ship with the captain of the ship, Captain Richard Phillips, as a hostage. The 4 pirates and Phillips departed from the Maersk Alabama on a launch boat, or I should say a lifeboat that was launched from the Maersk Alabama. The objective of the pirates to take Phillips ashore and hold him for ransom. Before the lifeboat was able to make it ashore, they're going to run out of fuel. That's when the Bainbridge to your right came on the scene. They actually offered to tow them in, so you have to picture this. This U.S. warship to your right, underway and under towed behind her, is a launch boat with Richard Phillips and 4 pirates aboard. The pirates were not aware that on board that ship, the Navy had also put on a team of elite Navy SEALs. Some of them were snipers. They managed to talk one of the pirates off of the lifeboat onto the ship to do what they thought was some negotiating, and left 3 pirates and Phillips aboard the launch boat, still in tow behind the Maersk Alabama. The snipers on the ship were waiting for one thing to happen, and that was for all 3 of those pirates remaining on the lifeboat to show themselves at the same time. When it finally took place, they took their shots, eliminating all 3, and thus rescued Richard Phillips. That's a ship that happened on to your right, number 96, the USS Bainbridge. In a few moments, I'll be pointing out to you some lifeboats that were very similar to the type of lifeboat that Phillips and those pirates were in. Coming up on the next pier, we're going to find 4 ships. Number 109, closest to us, is an Arleigh Burke. She's also the newest one at the base today. That's the USS Jason Dunnan. Behind her is another new Arleigh Burke called number 103, the USS Truxton. And we'll find a smaller ship on the opposite side of the pier from the Truxton. That ship back on the left side of the pier, all the way up in that corner, is the USS Kaufman. It's a Peary-class frigate. Navy built about 60 of that class. They're older ships that were coming online back in the mid-70s to the 80s, and initially they were used in escort operations. In today's Navy, they've been used primarily in training and law enforcement. Of the 60 built, there are only 16 that are remaining in service today. By the end of the decade, they will all be decommissioned. A very large and unusual looking ship on the opposite side of that pier, number 24, is the USS Arlington. She is the 8th of 9 of this class that have been built. They're called LPDs, or landing platform docks of the San Antonio class. This is an amphibious assault ship designed to land the Marines and equip it into a hostile beach. The hovercraft that ship carries inside what is called an interior well deck by a variety of aircraft that operate from the aft flight deck of the ship. A fairly large ship at 684 foot in length. She's 105 foot across her beam, would carry a crew of 361. That's a highly automated ship, and she will also accommodate about 800 Marines. The very unusual looking superstructures on the ship are called advanced enclosed mass systems. This is the first class of ship the Navy has built to incorporate this type of mast system into the ship's actual construction. There are a couple of principles involved with the design. One principle is to protect from the weather a lot of the ship's sensor gathering equipment, radar systems, communication systems. Other systems used for gathering information. When that equipment is protected from the weather, it doesn't have to be serviced or replaced nearly as often. Second feature in a design deals with stealthing technology or radar evasion. Notice the structures are built entirely at angles and sloping surfaces. When a radar signal strikes a surface of this type, that signal is deflected off at an angle rather than directly back to its sender. From a distance, that ship's upper structures would not line up or present to be as big a target on radar as a ship that is all flattened or squared surfaces. The Arlington to your right, a fairly new ship, only a little over a year and a half old. The ship was commissioned here in Norfolk about a year and a half ago, and she was named in honor of those that lost their lives on the attack on the Pentagon on 9/11. Coming up the next pier, we're going to find 4 Aegis equipped ships. 3 of them are Arleigh Burkes. One of them is a Ticonderoga class cruiser. On this side of the pier, the ship furthest away from us, well and short of the right, is the Tyco cruiser. Number 60 is the USS Normandy. A little closer to us is number 61, the USS Ramage. And on the opposite side of the pier are 2 more Arleigh Burkes, the one well inshore, and on the opposite side is number 78, the USS Porter. And down at the end of the pier, number 87, that is the USS Mason. If you look at the ship on this side of the pier, this end, that's the USS Ramage. There's a weapon on that ship I'd like to point out to you. If you'll focus your attention on the upper aft structure of the ship, that's the section of the ship facing us. Look up on the upper aft structure. You'll clearly see what look like 2 gray satellite dishes. Looking right below those 2 satellite dishes, you will see what looks like a light gray elongated cylindrical dome. The dome sits on top of a gray turret. And extending from the side of the gray turret, there's actually a cluster of 6 barrels that are now shrouded in gray canvas. If you're looking at that, you're looking at a weapon called Vulcan Phalanx, or often referred to as Sea Whiz. It is a last-ditch defense system. The other weapons on that ship failed to knock out a low-flying sea-to-sea missile, or possibly an aircraft that has slipped through that ship's initial defenses. Last chance to engage and destroy the threat is to use that weapon. It is a radar-controlled Gatling gun. When that weapon's radar locks in on a target, the theoretical rate of fire is 4,500 rounds a minute, equates to about 75 rounds per second. The effective range is 3 miles within a mile and a half. It is rated at nearly 100% accurate. The weapon uses a 20mm ammunition. The projectiles are constructed of tungsten carbide. It's so dense it has armor-piercing capability. All the surface combatants will see at the base that they carry this explosive weapon. If you look at these 2 Arleigh Burkes at the end of the pier, the Ramage and number 87, the Mason, notice their superstructures are also built entirely at angles and sloping surfaces. A couple of reasons for this. They are the first class of surface warship built for our Navy since the Second World War that have been built entirely of steel. The other surface ships at the base, hulls are built of steel, superstructures are built of aluminum. The Arleigh Burkes are all steel-built warships. Their superstructures are very heavy. They've slanted those structures inward to help lower their center of gravity. In doing so, they've also created stealthing technology. Again, angled and sloping surfaces deflect radar signals at a different angle. Therefore, the ship would not line up to present to be as big a target on the radar as a ship that has all flattened and square surfaces. 4 ships on the next pier. I got to say, there's a lot of ships out of the base. We have ordinarily we have just under 90 ships imported here. Generally, when you come out here, you might be lucky to see maybe 30 ships out of the base. But the aircraft carrier George Bush just came in about 2 weeks ago with her strike group, so we have a lot of ships out of the base at this time. Getting back to this next pier, the 2 ships on this side of the pier, well on shore to the right is an Arleigh Burke class guided missile destroyer. That is the USS Gravely, which is hull number 107. The large ship closest to us, it's number 13, is the USS Medgar Evers. The Medgar Evers is a Lewis and Clark class underway replenishment ship. There are 14 of the class in operation, and Navy refer to them as their super floating Walmarts at sea. They travel the strike group. Their mission is providing rapid replenishment of petroleum. Actually, they carry a limited amount of petroleum products on the ship, but they do carry dry storage, refrigerated supplies, a tremendous amount of ordnance. Their mission, of course, is providing rapid replenishment of those commodities to the fleet while at sea. They're operated for the Navy by the MSC or Military Sealift Command, denoted by the light blue and gold bandings that are painted around a stack or stacks on that particular ship. We'll see 2 other ships like the Medgar Evers at the base today as well. On the left side of the pier for the Medgar Evers, closest to us, number 52, is the USS Bearing, another Arleigh Burke. She's the second of the class constructed. Right behind the number 52 is a very large ship It is number 5. Her name is USS Baton. This ship and her amphibious ready group returned to Norfolk a little over 3 weeks ago from a 9-month deployment. The earlier part of the deployment in last June, this ship and 2 other ships involved with this amphibious ready group were stationed off the coast of Libya, ready to take actually U.S. citizens or evacuate from that. It didn't take place, but they were standing by for that. Later, the ships of this amphibious ready group were in the Persian Gulf, and the aircrafts of the USS Baton to our right did fly in missions to strike ISIS targets in Iraq. Primarily, their aircraft that are operated from the ship are Harriers and also a variety of helicopters. We're going to be looking at 2 more ships like the Baton in a few minutes. We'll get a much better view of one of them, the USS Wasp, and we'll go into great detail about these large assault ships that they're called LHDs, or landing helicopter dock ships of the Wasp class. Next pier coming up on our right is Pier 8. That's the supply pier of the base. On this side of Pier 8, number 12 is the USNS William McLean. She's another Lewis and Clark class ship, just like the Medgar Evers we just pointed out to you. On the opposite side of that pier, another underway replenishment ship. You can generally determine these replenishment ships. They have the light blue and gold bandings around their stacks. And again, that would denote or indicate they're operated for the Navy by the Military Sealift Command. Ship on the opposite side of Pier 8 is the USNS Bighorn. It is a Henry J. Kaiser class fleet oiler. Handles right at 180,000 barrels of petroleum products, the equivalent of about 7.5 million gallons. The other ship you'll see well inshore on the other side of Pier 8 is number 3. Number 3 is the USS Kearsarge. She is identical to the Baton to our right. Back behind us right, number 5. Again, we'll be looking at another ship like this in a few minutes. We'll get a much better view of the other ship, and we'll go into greater detail about these large assault ships at that time. Next 2 ships coming up on the right are identical. You can identify this class of ship by the very unusual looking superstructures that are called advanced enclosed mass systems, and these 2 ships are LPDs, or landing platform docks of the San Antonio class. And closest to us is number 19. The ship was involved with the amphibious ready group with the Baton, again just returning a little over 3 weeks ago. Number 19 is the Mesa Verde. And to her left, number 17, the lead ship of the class is the USS San Antonio. These ships are identical to the Arlington we pointed out to you just a few minutes ago. And there are 9 ships of this class in operation today. Next pier well ahead of us is Pier 11, and we'll see on this side of Pier 11 2 Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyers. Well ashore to the right, number 66 is the USS Gonzales. A little closer to us, number 55 is the USS Stout. The Arleigh Burkes, the reason for so many of them, there are over 60 of the class in service today. They make up the largest percentage of the surface ships now serving in the United States Navy. On the other side of the pier from the Arleigh Burkes, we'll see a much larger ship coming into view, which is hull number 1. Number 1 is the USS Wasp. She's the lead ship of the class. She is identical to the Kearsarge and Baton we just pointed out to you. There are 9 ships, or rather 8 ships of this class in operation today. And they're called LHDs, or landing helicopter dock ships of the Wasp class, and they're the largest amphibious assault ships in the world. Mission is to land the Marines a tremendous amount of equipment into a hostile beach during amphibious assaults. On these ships, it is accomplished by 2 modes of transportation. Inside of these ships, a tremendous area on the interior known as a well deck, which they have the ability to flood with water. When the well decks on these ships are flooded, it would cause them to sink on their stern by an additional 12 to 13 feet. That allows them to open on the stern of each of these ships a door called a stern gate. With the well deck flooded and the stern gates open, they can float in and out of the ship's well decks a variety of landing craft and also what are called LCACs. LCACs are air cushioning vehicles that ride on a cushion of air right above the surface of the water. They have great advantages over the Navy's traditional landing craft. The LCACs are fast. They're highly maneuverable. The great advantage they have is when those LCACs hit the beach, they can continue to glide on that cushion of air right over land. Theoretically, if the Marines ride over the beaches, they won't even have to get their boots wet. In addition to that, these ships will carry between 30 to 35 aircraft aboard, ranging from a variety of attack and transport helicopters right on down to 6 Harriers carried aboard a ship like this. Harriers are Vistal aircraft. They're jump jets. They have the ability of vertical liftoff, therefore they would not require a catapulting system. They'd be launched from the flight deck. Harriers on board as a means of air support for the Marines during assaults. These LHDs are huge ships with battle loads. They're 42,000-ton ships for the approximate size of an Essex-class World War War II aircraft carrier. They're 844 foot in length, 105 foot across their beam. These ships carry a crew of just over 1,100 and will accommodate about 1,900 Marines. And you'll find this rather amazing, but aboard all 8 ships of this class, including the 3 we pointed out to you at the base today, extensive medical facilities, a 600-bed hospital aboard each of those ships, a 21-bed trauma unit, 21-bed intensive care unit, 6 operating rooms. Not only are they great amphibious assault ships, but they're also great humanitarian ships as well. The last 2 piers of the base coming up on our right are often referred to as the aircraft carrier piers. Those are piers 12 and 14. If you're wondering what happened to Pier 13, there is no Pier 13 at the Naval Station. The Navy is superstitious about the number like the rest of us. And we're going to find 4 ships on these last 2 piers. Coming up on our right, number 5 is the USNS Robert Peary. It's another Lewis and Clark class on the way replenishment ship. She's identical to the Medgar Evers and the William McLean we pointed out earlier. The other replenishment ship ahead of us to our right is hull number 198. That is a Kaiser-class oiler. That ship is the USNS Kanawha. The other 2 ships on these piers are 2 of the largest and 2 of the mightiest warships in the world. Ahead of us to our right lie 2 of the United States Navy's Nimitz-class super aircraft carriers. On the opposite side of Pier 12 is CVN-71. That is the USS Theodore Roosevelt. Ahead of us to our right is CVN-77. She's the 10th and last of the Nimitz carriers constructed. Commissioned in 2009, that is the USS George H.W. Bush. That ship and her strike group just returned to Norfolk is actually 2 weeks ago today that strike group returned to Norfolk, bringing back a lot of the ships we've seen at the naval base this afternoon. The Navy refer to these Nimitz carriers as their super carriers. They're over 1,000 foot in length, and there are 10 of them in operation. And they're all the same. They're 1,092 foot in length. The extreme widths abreast of their flight decks are 252 feet. From the bottom of their keels to the tops of their masts is the equivalent of a 24-story building. Structure on the flight deck is called the island. It's where most of their operations are controlled. On the island of the Roosevelt, she'll bear the hull number 71, which would tell us she was the 71st consecutively planned aircraft carrier for the United States Navy. The flight deck on a Nimitz carrier covers an area of 4.56 acres. Theoretically, on the flight deck of just one of those ships, they could have 4 football games going on at the same time, and they'd still have room for spectators. When they're fully loaded, about 39 feet of these ships are below the surface of the water. Channel depths in this harbor run between 50 to 55 foot deep. These ships will carry several million gallons of fuel aboard. They refuel a lot of the fleet to go to sea with them, as well as all the aircraft that they carry. Now, technically, these ships will carry between 100 to 110 tactical aircraft, but more than likely, when deployed, they put to sea with around 80 to 85 aircraft, and that would depend on the type and size that you're using. Aircraft aboard these ships are launched into the air by the use of steam catapults at the speeds of up to 160 miles an hour. They're very capable of launching their first aircraft in 1 minute and one about every 15 seconds thereafter. They carry 4 of the steam catapults. Also equipped with 4 flight elevators. At this time, if you look directly to your right, you get a fairly good view down the starboard right-hand side of the Theodore Roosevelt. It's going to be hard to see from this angle, but there are 3 large oval openings on the side of the ship. The openings are entrances to the hangar deck where the aircraft is stored out of the weather. Below each of the openings is a flight elevator. From our perspective, the elevators look like a large platform that hangs off the dock. It hangs off the side of the ship and over the dock. There are 3 of them on this side of the ship and 1 on the other. As you may have guessed, it would be used to bring aircraft from the hangar deck to the flight deck. You could do so 1 aircraft about every 7 seconds. The 10 ships of the Nimitz class, including the 2 on our right, are atomic powered. These ships are powered by 2 atomic reactors, the cores. And the reactor plants on these ships will power them for 25 years or longer between refuelings, equivalent to a distance of over 1 million miles in steaming time. The reactors on these ships are designed to generate steam. Most of that steam is used to turn their 4 steam turbines that, when combined, will generate 280,000 shaft horsepower. You'll find it hard to believe these ships to your right at top speeds of close to 50 miles an hour. That looks impossible to push anything that large. The air resistance that fast, much less of the water resistance. With the air wing aboard, they each carry a crew of 6,000. With a crew of 6,000, it means that aboard a Nimitz carrier, they're serving aboard one of those ships about 18,000 meals a day. How would you like to get stuck with washing those dishes? Better than that, how would you like to pay for the grocery bill? I got news for you. If you're curious, the grocery bill aboard one of those ships runs over $1 million a month. They are complete cities within themselves. They carry practically everything aboard anyone could ever ask for. We used to say, except women. That's not true anymore. About 20 years ago, our Navy started to assign women aboard ships that carry a combat status. Carriers like the two on our right have at least 500 or more women living and working aboard them, performing the same tasks and duties aboard these ships as their male counterparts. On these ships, you would find banks, barber shops, butcher shops, bakeries, repair shops, a hospital, dental offices, operating rooms, a religious chapel. For the most part, air-conditioned throughout for the comfort of the crew. If these ships were to go to the West Coast, they'd have to sail around South America. They're much too wide and much too long to pass the Panama Canal. Both ships were built in Newport News, Virginia. The Theodore Roosevelt Baccalaureate was commissioned in 1986. George Bush, to your right, the 10th and last of the Nimitz carriers constructed. She was commissioned in 2009. And the 10 ships of this class, they are considered the largest, and they are the mightiest warships in the world. With battle loads, these are 97,000-ton ships. We can always rephrase that. There's 97,000 tons of diplomacy. Let's look ahead of us to your right. On the other side of that right jetty, we'll see another bridge crossing the water. That's the bridge section of the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel, Interstate 64. If you were to take 64 west, that would take you to Hampton, Williamsburg, Richmond, and other points west. Adjoining the left end of that bridge to our right, there is a small island, which is Fort Wall. It's an old Civil War fort. Part of the construction of that fort was supervised by Robert E. Lee back in 1834. To the left of Fort Wall and to our right, there is a huge opening. That opening is the entrance to the Chesapeake Bay. It's also the way into the Atlantic Ocean. The Atlantic is about 17 miles from the opening. The area of land you'll find to the left of that opening and ahead of us to our right is the city of Hampton, Virginia. That large brick building on the Hampton shoreline ahead of us to your right is the Chamberlain Hotel that dominates Old Point Comfort. Located behind and to the right of the Chamberlain, you would also find